Hi, my name is Fadil Ashari, and in this video, I will talk to you about one of Frederick Jameson's book titled Postmodernism or the Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism. Um, Before we begin to the summary, I will introduce you to Frederick Jameson. He is an American literary critic, a philosopher, and also a Marxist political theorist. Now, in this book, um, the postmodernism or the cultural logic of late capitalism, it talks about Jameson's views, deconstruction, and the criticism of postmodernism from the Marxist perspective. And that being said, I will start the summary now. So, at the beginning of the 40 pages long book, Jameson talks about how the world is changing, how a certain group of people, or as he referred to as inverted millenarianism, believe that there is a change between the era of late modernism into what he called as postmodernism period. First, he describes the resurgence of contemporary art during his time, such as pop art, new wave music, and commercial films, as etc., as a break or rather the final form of art from the already developed high modernist movement that is blooming before and during the Cold War era. For example, these are the mentioned contemporary art during this period. You can see in the bottom left, um, it's the resurgence of rock band The Beatles, and you can see the pop art on the top left corner, and you can see the movie titled American Gravity by George Lucas, and so on. Now, moving on, Frederick Jameson does not focus only on culture, but he also talks about how the aesthetic production of these emerging new arts is integrated into the commodity production in general through mass media, meaning that it changed or even shaped a whole new economy, one that is dominated with the postmodern culture. This is a strong characteristic of a Marxist views of connecting culture and the socio-economic structure of the society. Now, postmodernism itself, as Jameson described, is a cultural dominant that is going to affect all cultural productions and is able to be distinguished from one cultural modes of production. So it's not just another mode of production, but cultural modes of production, but it's also something that marks it. It also includes another modes of culture. Now, this change, as he had observed, began with the weakening of historicity, in which he senses the weakening of history, and I quote, both in our relationship to public history and the new forms of our private temporality, whose schizophrenic structure, following Lacan, will determine new types of syntax or syntagmatic relationship in the more temporal arts, a whole new type of emotional ground tone, what I will call as intensities. Um, it is explained in the later section of the book, the waning of affect. It's a section of the book called the waning of affect, in which he explained that the cultural products of postmodernism or postmodern arts lack but not completely devoid of feelings of expression. He refers to it as intensity. So, this new postmodernism arts, according to Jameson, it rejects the older ideas of depth, uh, depthlessness. It will be discussed later. So, what Jameson means is that, from what I understand, um, the cultural products of postmodernism kind of lack of there's a decrease in feelings of expression in this art, because it was created not to I think it's to for commercial purposes rather than um, for making some kind of a certain meaning to it. Now, the postmodern art has the characteristics of depthlessness, right? Jameson described that this art is only meaningful as it is seen. What you see is what you get, meaning that they invite interpretations from other viewers and does not have its own relations with the interpretation. He compared two paintings, Van Gogh's A Pair of Shoes, and which present Van Gogh's A Pair of Shoes represents the High Modernism period, and Andy Warhol's Diamond Dust Shoes from the age of postmodernism. Jameson said that Van Gogh's work has more message to reconstruct the world of poor man's world. It conveys a meaning. Like, if we see the painting, we are picturing the kind of world that Van Gogh is trying to convey in his painting. We see it reflects this what kind of society that during the Van Gogh's time, you know. But Warhol's work, compared to Warhol's work here, you can see it's a pop culture. Diamond dust shoes. You can see vibrant colors of shoes with a little bit of abstract expressionism right there, because of the forms. It's kind of deformed, right? So, according to Jameson, I think it's there's nothing to see in Warhol's work. Like, it is simply made for commercialization of culture. It's simply it simply does not have any depth. It does not have a meaning behind it. It's a mirror, because when we see the picture of Warhol, what we see is beauty, and that's it. We see the beauty. We see we can appreciate Warhol's attempt at making, trying to convey his emotions, maybe into this art. It's not completely devoid of any meaning, but the purpose of this painting is merely for commercialization. So it was made to make money. Now, moving on into the after all this, now moving on to the discussion of pastiche. Pastiche, as Jameson described, is one of the main characteristics of cultural production in the age of postmodern. He explained that the new artists of postmodern age are unable to create a new aesthetic forms, so they can only make empty parodies of older pre-existing ones without any depth of meaning. To be precise here, I will quote, pastiche is like parody, the imitation of a peculiar mask, speech in a dead language. But it is a neutral practice of such mimicry without any of parody's ulterior motives, amputated at the satiric impulse, devoid of laughter, and of any conviction that alongside the abnormal tongue you have momentarily borrowed. And pastiche is thus blank parody, a statue with blind eyeballs. It is to parody what that other interesting and historically original modern thing, the practice of a kind of blank irony, is to what Wayne Booth calls the stable ironies of the 18th century. Now, when the artist is trying to capture the past with pastiche, it will result in the loss of historicity. Such example is in the American Gravity movie by George Lucas, which has been discussed very, very in depth in this book. And now, after sharing his thoughts and concepts about postmodernism, we can conclude that Frederick Jameson perceived the modernism as something that is inevitable, and that he is aware of the big change coming in this period, in terms of both culture and socio-economy. As for the impact of postmodernism itself is still present in the current period, based on the characteristics that Jameson has showed us. I think that's my summary of the book. I personally still did not indulge deeper into the book. suffice to say that I have limited knowledge after reading this book. It probably needs a couple of reread because before I fully understand what Jameson means. So, but anyway, that's all for this video right now. I wish I did not make any I wish you can understand what I said, and apologies if I had any mistakes in quoting or interpretation. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I am going to close it now. Thank you.